permission for the erection of 156 dwellings, along with access, associated landscape and infrastructure at land to the northwest of Western Road, Cowden. So the application site edged in red, agricultural field located on the northern boundary of Cowden. This is a closer up of the site. Again, an aerial photograph. So the site is the dark green area of the agricultural field. You've got Western Way to the eastern boundary. Then on the southern boundary, you've got Wharton Street, and you've got existing residential dwellings largely on two sides. So this is a site photo looking from the northernmost part of the site along Westerton Way, looking back down towards the existing residential dwellings of Cowden. You can make out of that. That's the northern boundary, existing mature tree which will be retained. This is the view from the this is a view part down Western Road, looking towards the southern boundary of the site in Wharton Street. That's Wharton Street, and that's existing dwellings. This is a view from the southeast corner, looking back up across the site. You'll start to notice the level change, the site falling from the north in a southerly direction. You can see the mature tree that's on the that was shown in the first photograph, and some further mature trees on the site boundaries. This is a view from Wharton Street, looking north across the site, probably illustrating the level changes across the site, falling slightly from Wharton Street to a dip, then rising again to the northern boundary of the site. The levels also fall away to the west. So this is the landscape master plan. You can see the development is focused in the southeast portion of the site, with extensive areas of open space and structural landscaping to the north. There's a public right-of-way running across the site. This dashed line, they'd be retained through the site. And this has got a SUDS area to the west of the site, the most lowest point of the site. This is more detailed layout of the residential element of the site. You've got two vehicular accesses on the Western Road, located here and further up here. And you've also got a multi-user pedestrian cycle connection onto Wharton Street, just slightly off the shot there. But that is just limited to pedestrian cycle access, no vehicle access to the south. So the development is aligned along a number of cul-de-sacs to facilitate the level changes, say falling south, but also falling to the west there. There would be some retaining structures running along back gardens, and there'd be a mix of properties of semi-detached and detached dwellings, and a number of bungalows within the site. So you've got vehicle access point, details of the vehicle access points. These were, I say, on Western Way. Setting out the site visibility displays can be achieved, but they're just simple priority T junctions. With typical elevations, utilising corner turners where appropriate, and a number of bungalows across the scheme. 24 of the dwellings would be offered on an affordable basis. So in terms of consultations and representations, for 532 letters of objections, concerns are summarised in the report, paragraph 104, but the main issues relate to the principle of developments, landscape impacts, highway safety, flooding and infrastructure capacity and provision. But I say these are detailed in full in the report there. I've had no objections from consultees subject to recommendations of conditions where appropriate. However, harm and policy conflict is identified by the Council's landscape section. The NHS and the Council's education team recommend that financial contributions are secured through a legal agreement to mitigate the specific impacts of the development should planning permission be granted. And just as an update and a bit of clarity in the report, some of the case officer maths has gone slightly off, so I'll just run through the final sort of contributions as such. So a figure of £194,447 is required for nursery early years capacity. A figure of £134,368 is required for SEN education capacity. A figure of £75,390 is required for NHS GP surgery capacity improvements. A figure of £72,587 is required for public open space improvements, and a figure of approximately £2,000 for BNG monitoring. This gives a total contributions of £479,604. So just to clarify what was in the report there. So the site is, so in summary, the site is not allocated for housing and is in the open countryside for planning policy purposes. The agricultural land is not identified as best and most versatile and is of moderate quality. When assessing under Policy 6 or an allocated sites policy, the site is considered to be in a sustainable location, which is appropriate in terms of its scale, design, layout to the character and function of the settlement. There are no technical reasons why the site cannot be developed, with particular regard to highway safety, flooding and residential amenity, subject to appropriate conditions where appropriate. And any residual impacts during construction and to ecological interests could be mitigated through appropriate conditions. The development can mitigate its specific impacts in relation to educational capacity, increased demand on NHS services, and open space provision in the area. It is identified that the development would lead to localised landscape harm. This is assessed to be at the moderate significant level, resulting in some conflict with criteria Policy 6 and 39 of the County Durham Plan. It is recognised that this level of impact would reduce over time as landscaping matures. As a result, the landscaping harm and as bus stops are beyond the required 400 metres walking distance to the centre of the site, the development has scored 2 reds through the Council's design review process. This results in conflict with Policy 6 and 29 of the County Durham Plan. In terms of benefits and the planning balance, the development would make provision of 24 affordable housing units. This is 8 above policy requirement. This is considered to be a significant benefit. The development would deliver additional residential dwellings, which would provide the recognised socio-economic benefits attributed to such developments. The scheme would also contribute to the Council's housing land supply. These benefits are afforded significant weight. The development also results in a 79% increase in BNG over the current baseline condition of the site. Again, this is a benefit to be afforded moderate weight. While the development would mitigate its own specific impacts in relation to education, NHS and open space provision, there would be a residual benefit to the wider public, resulting in a limited benefit. Overall, when taking these into the round, it is considered that the benefits of the development would identify the harm and policy conflict identified, and therefore the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you, Steve. Now we have several speakers, and we'll start with the ward member for the area accountant, Councillor Rowland.
Good afternoon, Chair. My name's Kate Rowland, Councillor Kate Rowland of Shildon in the Dean Valley area. Chair, councillors, I speak on behalf of the residents of Coundon. The committee report in front of you frequently mentions conflict with policy, particularly policies 6, 10, 29, 39, 44 and 35I and 39, but particularly 6 and 39. As the local councillor, I feel my role is to point out that this application does not align with DCC and national planning policy. The internal design review points to refusal with 7 ambers, just 3 greens and 2 reds. Policy 29 states a score of 1 or more reds will be refused planning permission without significant reasons. This application has 2. In the planning officer's summary, he hasn't mentioned the comments from the document, which has been scored as unacceptable. The landscape officer has said that whilst planting and landscape mitigation is welcomed, there remains an element of landscape and visual harm, and that the development is harmful to the character and distinctiveness of the site and its immediate surroundings. The drainage consultee advised on August 7th that the layout does not comply with the County Durham Plan or national standards for surface water management. The report suggests that the harm caused by the development is outweighed by benefits like additional affordable housing and financial contributions. With respect, these benefits are not proportionate and do not mitigate the damage to the landscape and the loss of open countryside, especially when Planning Department have a history of removing the obligation to provide on-site affordable rent and discount sales units and allowing 106 agreements to be varied post-approval. The two most recent developments in the village, Dixon Way in 2009, Bishop's Court in 2022, both added a significant number of homes to the village, but the Affordable Homes Agreement and 106 contributions, which were agreed, were varied after the applications had been approved. The agreements weren't worth the paper they were written on. If this were to happen again with the additional affordable homes being used as mitigation for conflicting with local and planning policies, it would mean that that policy was ignored and the field has been destroyed for absolutely nothing. Slide 2, please. This is historic significance. Coundon takes its name from the Old English Cowes Hill, once owned by the Prince Bishop at Ortland Castle. This was a medieval township field, visible strip farming is evidenced until the mid-20th century. The site has been farmed for centuries and is a local historical asset. For this to be destroyed, the NPPF states clear and convincing justification is required. Slide 3, please. Throughout the final report, it is acknowledged that the scheme conflicts with CDP Policy 6 and 39. The following are just a selection of comments which support this. 1, the development would not be characteristic of local landscape and would fundamentally change the historical open character of the site and panoramic views. 2, the development would create a settlement extension on open countryside. 3, the loss of open land would fundamentally change the character of the locality. 4, the proposals would entail harm to the character, quality and distinctiveness of the landscape and important views. 5, there would be a landscape effect of major significance. 6, the incursion of built form into open farmland would be notable. 7, the field occupies an elevated site. It is widely visible in views from the upper Coundon Burn Valley. And 8, it is visible in long distance views from the west. For these reasons, in the previous local plan, a policy stated that the township field was to be protected from all further development because it is a very prominent site due to its landscape. Slide 4, please. This photograph shows the township field during harvest this year. The image makes clear just how steep and prominent the field is. Screening would be impossible. Slide 5, please. This is a view from the A689 at Toronto, which is 3.5 miles away. You can see the site is immediately in front of you as you approach Bishop Auckland, surrounded by rural landscape. Building here would create a settlement extension into an open countryside visible for miles around. Next slide, please. From Humwick, 4.2 miles away, the township field is prominent due to the landscape. Next slide, please. For local residents and those far away at North Bitchburn, the township field forms part of the rural landscape. The planning officer states the site is in private ownership and therefore does not offer the recreational value. This is false, as the public right-of-way which runs across the middle of the site is well used due to the spectacular views it gives. It would be destroyed. The BFL document notes the development would transform the character and enjoyment of the public right-of-way, and the landscape consultee has said the path would be completely transformed by built development. Next slide, please. This is productive agricultural land with grade 3B soil, contributing to UK food security and reducing food miles. It is recorded as having been producing food since 1183. Next slide, please. DCC are currently able to demonstrate a 6-year housing supply. It is therefore unnecessary to breach policy and build on this unallocated site in the countryside, particularly when an application to build 70 homes on an allocated brownfield site in the village has recently been recommended for approval. 10 of these proposed 70 houses would be affordable. This application has faced the application has faced little objection from the community as it complies with policy and is appropriate in terms of scale and location, unlike the site we're looking at. Oh, next slide, please. The applicant's transport assessment states that the site is sustainable. The BFL, however, scores public transport as red due to the once hourly bus service, which only provides connections to local villages and not towns. And by the time it gets to that bus stop, then it's usually full and they have to wait for the next bus. The village facilities and services have also been scored red in the BFL. It states that whilst there are limited facilities and services which are within walking distances, they would not support a development of this size. The reality is that healthcare, shopping, leisure facilities, places of work, schools, etc. are located outside the village and are only accessible by car, foot or cycle. But you only have to visit Camden to know that neither walking or cycling would be a realistic option. Distances that are suggested to amenities may be acceptable, but no allowance has been taken for the gradients. Cycle routes within the development may look good, but there's no cycle network beyond the village to join onto. Highway safety is a real concern, adding traffic from 156 homes, and all the associated journeys by car will significantly increase risk. Accidents such as this, which happened 400 metres from the proposed site entrance, shows the road for traffic exiting the site heading north, a country lane with no pavements and no street lights. Next slide, please. Sorry, that was for that last slide. So you can see the width of it. Right, next slide, please. So the site contains a live culverted watercourse which cannot be built over. The video and photo evidence has repeatedly been submitted to show the culvert is active. If you could press again, it'll be able to show the video. The plans you are being asked to consider involve building over the culverted watercourse which cannot legally happen. The culvert will need to be daylighted and diverted. This is required by CDP policy 35I, which states that all new development with culverts running through the site must seek to deculvert watercourse for flood risk management, but no plans have been submitted for this eventuality, and neither have a supporting FRA, drainage plan or SUDS design. Therefore, critical elements remain unknown. The site layout and number of houses that you are considering cannot be delivered. Therefore, the promise to deliver 8 additional affordable homes as mitigation for harm to the landscape cannot be guaranteed. The community believe that the application should have undergone a sequential test. The reasoning for this is in the support information. In addition to refusal on those grounds, the community believe there are at least 3 additional technical grounds for refusal, which are also detailed in the support information. Regardless, to approve this type of major change to layout and drainage, etc., after a planning application has been approved and without a consultation process would be perverse. Furthermore, a sequential test has been submitted in direct breach of the NPPF paragraph 175. Without this, the application cannot proceed. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please. An unprecedented number of public objections have submitted, over 530. Many of residents are here today. The County Durham plan is clear that countryside development and unallocated land is not permitted unless strict criteria are met. Securing financial contributions and suggesting the provision of a small number of additional affordable homes undeniably outweighs permanent landscape harm and unresolved drainage risks, sets a worrying precedent. The only robust and lawful conclusion available is refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kate. We have a statement from the other ward councillor, Michael Ramage. He's not present today, but has asked for his statement to be read, and Kirsty is going to read it.
I did not attend the gathering at the township field earlier. My reason being I am familiar with the area. I used to help my friend Christopher remove agricultural produce from the field owned at the time by the Rinaldi family. I've declined to join or support the opponents of development or actively as a councillor promote development. In my view, residential development is inevitable, whether based on the current application or an application in the next 4 years. While constituents in the ward, the majority support development, I have objections, non-planning points, but nevertheless I consider they are relevant. Overall, it is my view the planning committee should defer the application for the reasons listed below. 1. There is land within the villages of Coundon and Leholme owned by DCC and Believe Housing. Both must develop their areas as a priority and before the field. I have flagged with the DCC planning team there is an opportunity to develop land to the north of Addison Road owned by Believe Housing and the former Leholme School site and Plainfields owned by DCC, and an area known as Etty Hill owned privately. Those areas have been crying out for residential development, whether social housing or affordable housing, for the past 20 years. In my view, a significant capital receipt has been overlooked by DCC. 2. While not a planning point and a bad legal point, the owners of properties in Weston Road likely have an easement known as a right to light. So to protect the right, which has probably been established by a passage of time, I recommend bungalows only for the eastern boundary of the field. There must be restoration of the historic indigenous hedgerow, so the bungalows would have an element of privacy and the right to light for Weston Road properties would not be diminished. The cottage adjacent to the northeastern corner of the field has been reorientated, but bungalows would alleviate an invasion of privacy and there would be the opportunity to replace the removed historic indigenous hedge. 3. The extent of the field connects to an area historically known as the pastures and then onwards to the A689. It is common knowledge in the ward that DCC is considering a proposal to construct a roundabout and allow a relief road to the Auckland project venues adjacent to the River Weir. The Coundon Burn runs by way of the field and the pastures. It has been subject frequent to environmental spillages. I raise the point that until the roundabout is constructed and a link provided as a relief road to Coundon, the development of the field should be deferred. 4. I suggest for the benefit of the ward areas covering Coundon and Leholme, the balance of convenience is for the DCC and Believe Housing and the private owners of Etty Hill development of their land. It is suitable for social housing, bungalows or a private gated community for over 55s. In addition, DCC could extend the planning envelope on the northern side to connect the Leholme Recreation Ground. The development would allow Section 106 funds to rejuvenate the LRG. 5. If planning permission is granted, I suggest the first 200 metres of the field from Westerton Road inwards is designated for bungalows only. The bungalow type categorised as social housing only, with occupancy reflecting over 55s and or adults with special needs. Such an arrangement would reduce pressure on existing facilities in the village, such as local schools, while increasing footfall for businesses. 6. The Arriva bus service number 56 is below customer expectations. Nevertheless, the layout of the proposed development must include a bus route.
Thank you, Kirsty. We now have, for the objectors, Mr. Maurice Dixon, who's going to do a presentation. Thank you, Maurice. Excuse me, Maurice, just to mention, you're limited to 5 minutes. I think you already know that, but
Yeah,
Kirsty will give you a warning.
I'll put my timer on.
Hey, Maurice, I think we're ready to go.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. I am Maurice Dixon, a Camden resident elected to speak for the many residents who care deeply about our village, our landscape and our heritage. 532 object to, and we ask you to reject this application. As summarised here on this slide, this proposed development brings no long-term social, economic or environmental benefit, but adds significant damage and harm to our community and well-being. Next, please. Township Field sits on a steep, prominent slope, clearly visible from our homes, footpaths, from miles away. Building here would destroy its open countryside character and eliminate panoramic views that generations of residents have enjoyed. You cannot hide this development behind landscaping. The topography makes that impossible. Once this view is lost, it's lost forever. Next, please. This is not just any field. This is a rare example of medieval strip farming. Next slide, please. Thank you. It's still being worked today. These strips of land parcels are part of Camden's history and identity. Losing them would erase an irreplaceable link to our heritage. This field is the reason for our village name, Cow on the Hill, seen from the Bishop's Palace in Bishop Auckland. The field generates crops all year round at a time when the UK government wants to increase food security. Township Field is a natural buffer between Leaholme Village and Camden Village. Most of the proposed development is on the steepest parts of the slopes. However, no information on the extensive and expensive levelling, retaining land and major works needed to stabilise and prepare the site for construction has been provided. Next, please. The drainage scheme breaches county and national standards. The reports are incomplete, misleading and ignore the active, now damaged, culverted watercourse that simply can't be built over or disturbed without legally required detailed option designs which haven't been provided. The proposed SUDS is located on the current lower field surface flood areas, and development would risk increasing the many on-site flood areas and downstream flooding generated from the vast roof and road path areas from which rain would run off that the current field absorbs as a natural water management system. Next, please. Construction and new resident traffic, extra light pollution and poorer air quality would change the health and quality of the life in the village. This isn't just about the way, the view, it's about how it feels to live here. Next, The emissions from the construction period, at least an extra 250 cars, and housing emissions would totally outweigh any theoretical energy efficient housing design emission reductions benefits that are claimed, and the almost zero emissions from the current township field. Any development would merge Leaholme and Camden settlements for no local housing need or community benefit. Next, please. Dwindling limited village facilities are listed on this slide. So almost no sort of social supporting facilities at all, and in fact they've reduced over the last 10 years. The Building for Life report on facilities and services states, whilst facilities are within walking distance of the site, what exists would not support a development of this size. Everyone travels out of the village by vehicle for services and facilities. None of the development negative impact could be offset by proposed basic biodiversity net gain measures or a few extra social houses. Next, please. 156 dwellings would be disproportionate to the village size and character, adding to the previous planned extra housing and further straining already highlighted limited and reducing local amenities. 150 plus dwellings already added in recent years, with another 70 awaiting a deferred decision. Local roads are unsuitable for hundreds of extra daily journeys due to already heavy traffic, on-street parking throughout the village, and it gets worse in the winter where everybody parks up on the main roads because they can't get up the slopes when it's icy and it's snowing. And with the increased traffic safety risks to all users, vehicles, pedestrians, it's just not acceptable to have all these vehicles in the village. There are limited buses, no cycleways within or into or out of our hilltop village to connect to, and with overgrown pavements forcing users onto the narrow and dangerous roads for much of the year. Next, please. The development breaches most NPPF and DCC policies and most of the Balance for Life assessment criteria. There is already sufficient housing supply projected for Durham area, with housing policy stating to focus on unused vacant housing, brownfield sites, before greenfield sites. As a sustainability consultant and advisor myself, I can categorically state this is not in any way a sustainable community adding local long-term community benefit and housing needs. No, last one, please. I think this says it all, really. Picture paints 1,000 words. CDP 29 states one or more red scores are not acceptable and will be refused. There are no overriding reasons to have this application approved. We request you follow the evidence or lack of evidence provided by the planning case officer in his committee report and the Building for Life documents and planning policies to categorically reject this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we have somebody to represent the applicant, Mr. Alistair Willis. Again, you have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I'm Alistair Willis, planning agent here on behalf of Partner Construction. I'd like to thank officers for their hard work on this application over the last few years. Members can be reassured by the fact that officers have assessed every aspect of the application before you today in great detail, recognising the level of public interest and the pressures faced by a changing national planning system. During the assessment of this application, we have worked to resolve all issues positively, resulting in a scheme which we consider is entirely appropriate and suitable for the site, a conclusion also drawn by your expert officers. Delivery of this scheme will see the creation of significant areas of public open space which are not currently accessible, over 50% of the total site area, also contributing to a biodiversity net gain significantly in excess of the policy requirement, 79% we heard earlier. Concerns around landscape have been addressed through the detailed consideration of building orientation, layout, materials and heights. The development avoids the highest and most exposed parts of the site, minimising its prominence in the wider landscape, with a strong buffer to the north. This results in a situation where the long-term landscape harm is limited and any residual harm is outweighed by the benefits following national planning policy. Significantly, the site is not protected as an area of high landscape value in the CDP. Whilst we consider the proposed development is acceptable in its own right, we recognise the concerns raised by objectors, and taking a planning balance approach set out within the committee report, we have included a series of measures which reinforce the acceptability, weighing significantly in favour of development. These include a significant increase in affordable housing. The Council's own evidence demonstrates a need for 836 affordable homes every single year. Over the period 2016 to 2022, approximately 300 have been delivered every year. That's less than 40% of the total requirement. This scheme will greatly assist local people who want to access high-quality housing themselves by delivering 15% on-site against a policy requirement of only 10. Also, extensive areas of additional open space usable for the whole community. Highly energy-efficient dwellings, allowing residents to make significant savings on their energy bills, approximately £1,500 per year. Support for a significant number of construction and supply chain jobs in the county. Support for local shops and services, which we've just heard are struggling with customers. Improvements to public rights of way, providing access to remaining land for all of the community, amongst other things. Picking up on the culvert points, we've done extensive survey work, and the survey work we've done has demonstrated that it is running dry at the moment, albeit I've seen the video there today. However, that does not preclude development happening. The development scheme can reorientate and reroute the culvert through the site, and conditions are in place to ensure that does and will happen. Significantly, in only 6 weeks' time, this council will not have a 5-year housing land supply, representing a significant shift in how planning applications should be assessed, reducing the weight to be applied to the local plan. Recent appeal decisions with local authorities in similar situations have demonstrated this forthcoming change should be a significant consideration in the determination of applications now. Appeal decisions have given great weight to this situation, as much as 10 months ahead of the change. In determining this application, members must remain conscious of this change and what it will mean for future applications and appeals. This application represents an opportunity to approve a great development with a wide range of benefits for the local community and boost the supply of housing, including affordable housing, to meet local identified needs. This also includes almost £500,000 worth of contributions to local services and facilities, with a draft Section 106 agreement already in place, already prepared to secure these contributions, and significant additional council tax income, boosting an already heavily stretched council budget in the context of a council which has spent in recent years over £1 million defending planning appeals. So, in conclusion, we demonstrate the application site is a sustainable and suitable location for the proposed development, and we urge members to support your expert officer's recommendation and welcome the opportunity to answer any questions you may have in your consideration of this application. Thank you.
Thank you. I think now Steve, do you want to come back on anything that's been said?
I think we'll just go straight to members' questions, if you're happy with that, Chair. I just would want to point out very quickly that you know, we do need to consider the application that's in front of us, not an alternative scheme or suggestion elsewhere. That is, you know, we need to consider what's in front of us there.
Thank you. You've finished? Yeah. Right. Now I think at this stage we will open the matter to members for questions. Councillor Wilkes.
Thanks, Chair. I just want some clarity from officers regarding Policy 6, Development on Unallocated Sites, which states that development on sites not allocated in the County Durham Plan or Neighbourhood Plan, which are either, just go through. So I'm looking at two different parts of Policy 6 here. B, which says that does not contribute to coalescence with neighbouring settlements, and C, does not result in the loss of heritage value. So when I'm looking at that there, I've got a village called Leholme on one side, we've got a village called Cowden on the other side, and all of the land in between is the development site. So I'd like to know from the officers whether or not they don't consider that Leholme and Cowden are separate villages at all, because this is indisputable that it's coalescence of two villages. And then we've had a lot of comments from different people about heritage value of the land. So I'd just like to know, from an officer point of view, do they not consider that there is any heritage value to this land?
Thank you. Steve?
Yeah, clearly you recognise that Leholme, sorry, I'm echoing slightly, but I'm not sure why. We do recognise that Leholme and Cowden are two separate settlements. However, for landscape purposes, I think, you know, you read, you know, the built form as one entity. However, clearly, as set out in the officer report, and particularly summarising the landscape officer's comments, we recognise that there is landscape harm. That is matters that need to be weighed in the planning balance in our undertaking of the Balancing Act, we don't feel that that landscape harm or the level of landscape harm warrant refusal of the application and a justification, upholding that refusal at appeal.
Thank you. Councillor Bellingham.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to get this one out straight away. Partner Construction, the developer there, has just said, and I quote, "They examined in great detail every part of this development of this land, but yet, obviously, there has been shown on screen the active culvert where they've said it might have been not used, unused, or abandoned, as the words being used." Can they just, if that part of their assessment hasn't been looked at, correctly, what other parts haven't been looked at correctly?
Thank you, Councillor Bellingham. Was that for the officer? Yeah.
That was for the developer.
What I would say is that, our drainage team are very thorough professionals who have scrutinised this application. Yeah, I mean, the drainage officer not here to defend himself, but, I will vouch for his professional integrity. They have scrutinised this application robustly. They consider that the drainage of the site itself, mitigates its own impacts. It is identified that there is a culvert, which there has been some significant survey work undertaken. There's a confidence that is classed as abandoned. However, that cannot be ruled out until that is fully been exposed to see whether there's any flows into that. However, that matter is a matter of technicality, would need to, is covered by separate legislation. And, ultimately any flow that went into the culvert would need to be rerouted. That could be through the development site, but that wouldn't necessarily need to feed into the drainage system of the site, which has been tested and found to be sound there.
Councillor Bellingham, was that addressed to the applicant as well, that question?
Yes, it was, because the quotes were from the applicant they have examined everything in great detail. And what I would sort of say there to Steve, just in a very slight follow-up, is if this analysis had happened beforehand and was able to be presented as clear data, that perhaps this wouldn't have come up as such an issue.
Thank you. Mr. Willis, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, just briefly, if I may. Local residents are probably very aware that they've probably seen people doing surveys of those culverts in recent weeks, I would imagine. The images that we've taken have been shared with officers and do clearly show a dry culvert, to be fair. I'm not going to dispute residents. I personally don't know where that video was taken from. It's difficult for me to comment on a video that I've just seen on screen without having seen it myself or it's shown on a map, but kind of is what it is. I think that the main point is, as Mr. Pilkington points out there, is that there are conditions in place which secure further investigation on this. It does not preclude development. If it is a collapsed culvert, it will be repaired or diverted by the development, which is overall a betterment, in my opinion. Alternatively, it remains as a collapsed culvert, which I don't think is very beneficial to anybody.
Thank you. Councillor Rowland, do you know when that video was taken? Pardon, we can't hear you, Councillor. Put your microphone on.
Sorry, November 2023.
Thank you. Obviously, you've had quite an unusual dry spell until started to stop today, hasn't it? But that may indicate why it was running, why it was dry. Was that a possibility?
It's possible. I'm not a drainage expert, other than to say, as you point out, I mean, that is nearly 2 years ago. It has been a dry patch. We have done a lot of survey work of that culvert. We know it's collapsed somewhere. Officers are aware that it's collapsed somewhere. We will and can repair it. But that's only going to happen through development ultimately.
Thank you. Councillor Catchpole, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. And can I just make a statement that that culvert is absolutely in use? I've been out there today. Yeah, so I think when the survey goes in, if it's a dry period, it will be dry. But obviously it's raining today, so it's in use.
So you inspected the culvert today?
Yes, I did, yeah. With boots and lots of mud. But thank you. My point is really about the SUDs. So the SUDs have been sized appropriately for that development. Yeah, and I'd like an answer from both officer and the developer on this one, because if we're looking at the water and the wastewater and the drainage, yeah, and all of a sudden that SUD has been sized appropriately for that development, that doesn't take into account any other issues around wastewater and drainage.
Steve, start with you.
Yeah, I mean, clearly if there's a flow that goes into the culvert, that would need to be rerouted. That doesn't mean to say that that would necessarily take it through the development's drainage system itself. It may just need to bypass part of the site and discharge further into the watercourse further down, which it already does. So it's not a given that it would need to, you know, the site would need to accommodate that existing flow. It would just need to be rerouted further down the watercourse. However, obviously there is a condition of a drainage strategy to sort of be fully submitted to ourselves that are based on the principles that I've set out. And obviously there's this separate legislation that our drainage team is the lead flood authority for the area. They have separate powers and legislation which would regulate these matters. My view is that this issue is not sort of determinative on the application. It's a matter that needs to be addressed. That's what conditions are for. Sometimes you don't have everything in front of you, but you have a strategy or parameters or an idea that you know can be resolved, and the conditions sort of drill down on those details, because clearly not everything can be provided up front, but the majority of the work can be done, which has been done in this instance.
Mr. Willis, do you want to add anything?
Just very briefly, I think the question related to surface water and wastewater, just to be clear, SUDs do not take wastewater into them, it's just surface water flows. The SUDs have been designed to a 1 in 100 design requirement plus urban creep and climate change, so I think, again, as Mr Spilkins points out, the Council's lead local flood authority officer have been extremely diligent in their assessment of it and ensured it meets all the relevant criteria.
Thank you. Councillor Catchwell, any further question?
Hi, Chair. I'd like to set some sort of conditions in place for this, because at the end of the day, if we have to revise the plans and the SUDs and the SUD sizes, then all of a sudden we're revising the whole planning side of things. Yeah, so I'd like to recommend that we put a condition, or we defer until that can actually be determined.
Thank you. Anything you want to say, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, clearly you couldn't have a condition which fundamentally changed the scheme, but you could have a condition which required further analysis of that, of the culvert, to come up with a strategy of how that is routed through the site, and if there's any modifications required to the SUDs, that could be controlled by a condition if members so wish.
Thank you. Any question? Dawn?
Thank you, Chair. Just sort of moving on from the culvert a little bit, just need to be educated on this really. You say the technical conditions are being met. Does landscape and visual harm, does that fall into that technical bracket?
No, so we've got a landscape visual assessment that's been undertaken. Our landscape officer has appraised that. You know, his thoughts are set out in the committee report. The committee report doesn't shy away that there is landscape harm. We consider this to be at a moderate level, and weighing that in the planning balance, taking into account the proposed landscape mitigation strategy, which would mitigate some of the impacts. It's not going to remove them all. Some of them will stay there. But that level would be at a moderate level, and in the planning balance, our opinion is that you know, that doesn't warrant refusal of the application, and at an appeal, you know, we feel that an inspector would go with the appellant on that basis.
It said in the report, major to moderate adverse impact, and is it your belief, how do you see that as lessening over time? Is it the landscaping features that are going to be added, or?
find the right plan. So yeah, so there is structural planting along the northern elevation and areas within the site. But clearly you've seen the levels of the topography. That, you know, that would reduce the impact. We still feel that is at a moderate level, and that's clear in the report that moderate level of landscape harm, in our opinion, doesn't warrant refusal of the application when taking into account the planning balance. But clearly members are going to have to take their own view on that.
Thank you. Councillor Catchpole.
Sorry, Steve. Thank you, Chair. Just another question. I mean, how can you say it's moderate when it clearly states will cause unacceptable harm to the character and landscape? That's not moderate. That's severe.
Our characterisation of that, and the landscape officer is in the round, that is moderate harm. But, you know, clearly that's the way I've attributed it, or we've attributed that in the planning balance. If members feel differently, they're entitled to do that. But my professional opinion is that you class that harm as moderate, and that has been categorised by the landscape officer on that.
Sorry, and just another one. I'm looking at this whole thing, and we started off, there's 3 reports that have been categorised on here. The first one was 14th of February 2024, yeah, and has 8 red recommendations, yeah, and then the last one was the 18th of June 2025. What I'd like to ask is, what mitigations have been put in place to all of a sudden go from 8 reds to 2?
Yes, I think we've moved on to the sort of design review here. So the design review, you know, effectively poses 12 questions to a developer, and that helps us provide a framework and sort of how we assess quality of design. And in that design review is met 3 times. At each of those times there's been revised plans that have been submitted in terms of the layout, changes to the structural landscaping, or to address other matters. And ultimately we've got to a position where we've identified there's 2 reds. One of the reds is linked to the distance of bus stops from the site, which is beyond the 400 metres. However, in the round, we don't feel that would lead to one refusal purely on sustainability grounds. And the second one is related to the landscape impact, and that is a red. You know, but that in itself, or the factors that they are red, doesn't qualify the site as bad design. They're just elements of strand of the design review process.
Sorry, just to counter, I think what I'd like to see is the 3 reports alongside each other and what mitigation has taken place to actually go from 8 to 2. Yeah, I understand what you're saying and the decisions that you're making, but I can't see all the decisions that have been made.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be difficult in the meeting to get the whole suite of plans up that are going to sort of articulate the changes. On the council's website, it does set out, you know, the findings of the design review meetings, but certainly in terms of the overall footprint and of the development and the relationship to Westernton Way, the detailing of the SUDs, the incorporation of additional landscape in the reduction in the numbers of units, they're the headline sort of figures that have been, they're the headline amendments that have been put forward at the design review of reviews. And the design review is made up of the planning officers, highways officers, landscape officers, drainage officers, and collectively, you know, that's the final score that's come to there.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkes.
Thanks, Chair. I think I've got to the point from listening to the responses from officers that I'm not particularly happy with this development. Going back to and on 3 points, I think, for me. The first one is the policy 6 that I mentioned before does say that unallocated sites will be permitted if they accord with all development plan policies, and specifically do not contribute to coalescence of neighbouring settlements. Well, it's obvious that it's a coalescence of 2 villages. Nobody can deny that. You only have to look at it. So on policy 6, this application should fail in my view. We've then got moderate to severe landscape harm, and it's very clear. I know the area quite well. There's actually other parts of this area, as somebody else said, that are crying out for development and improvement first. If somebody wants to bring back this application at a later date, with the county plan consultation at the moment, they're allowed to do that, and it can be considered at that stage. But right now, the landscape harm that we've got here is just way too much. And then we've got 2 reds, so it's also in breach of Policy 29, Sustainable Design. So from my point of view, I'll be voting against this on the grounds of Policy 6, Policy 39 and Policy 29. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I think we're moving into debate. Does anyone want to add anything to what Councillor Wilkes has said? Do you have a question, Councillor Shulman? Do you want to?
Yes. Well, I have doubts as to whether the developer has surveyed the site adequately. I know the site. I have lived in Bishop Auckland. That site absorbs water. With roads and roofs, the water is not going to be absorbed. I have seen the A688 shut with flooding with the site as it is. I don't think any account has been made of surface water from roofs and roads.
Thank you. I think we are moving into debate now, so anybody else wants to say anything about this application? Councillor Stevenson.
I did have a big list of questions, but I think my colleagues here have answered most of them for me, to be honest. My only main thing is really, obviously, Policy 6, that was mentioned by Councillor Wilkes here. And obviously, if this site is visible from 7 miles away, and we've seen from all parts of different parts of South Durham, any trees to the north side, which has got a hill behind it anyway, would not had anything to screen in this thing at all. If anything, it would frame it more on the landscape. To be honest, if this doesn't fall under severe harm to the to its landscape harm, I'm not sure what does really.
Thank you. I think I'm in agreement. Having done the site visit, I was struck by the site and its unique quality. And I can't see how that can be mitigated, the work that's been done. I would consider it severe landscape harm. Councillor Freeman.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with my colleague, Councillor Wilkes. While there are benefits to this scheme, to this application, the affordable homes would be very welcome indeed. Houses in general, very welcome. And undoubtedly the biodiversity net gain would have some benefit to the site in that it would create a better environment than what is there at the moment, which in effect is a field. However, I do think all of that is outweighed by the damage to the landscape. I think that overrules any benefit that the application is providing. I appreciate that the applicants can appeal and that the planning inspector may take a different view on the value of that landscape, but I think a lot of us here are very concerned about that landscape value and would wish to see it preserved as it is and hopefully get a development elsewhere in the area that can provide affordable housing and more housing. So if Councillor Wilkes is proposing refusal, which I think he was, then I'm happy to second that proposal.
Thank you. So just to confirm, on the basis of significant landscape harm, the proposal is that you reject the officer's recommendation to support the application.
Chair, I would say Policy 6 in relation to the coalitions of neighbouring of settlements. Policy 39, as you say, significant harm to the landscape. And also we've got 2 reds there on sustainable development, Policy 29 as well.
Thank you, Chair. So I've heard what Councillor Wilkes has to say in terms of proposed refusal reasons. I think my advice would be to try and steer them away from the issue of coalescence. I understand the point he makes about the 2 red scores that are set out in the report, particularly in and around landscape, adverse landscape and visual impact, and the benefits of the scheme. And I know we've heard from Councillor Freeman, who summarised those, particularly around an uplift in BNG offer and affordable housing, that they're not felt by members to be sufficient to outweigh that. I think if that's the reason we're going down, clearly it's a judgment in terms of benefits versus harm. It's a planning judgment. It is a situation that may well end up at appeal. The planning landscape in terms of what that might look like in terms of policy at appeal may well be different. We may well be in a tilted balance by then, but it is a balancing exercise for members to make.
Chair, thank you. Yeah, I just want to follow what Neil said there. I think there's been a good debate today around the key planning issues, and I think some of them, there's quite clear consultee advice where we really would be struggling in the event of a planning appeal, whether that's to be held where we do have a 5-year land supply, or potentially moving forward where we haven't. But I think the golden thread which runs through the report on this, which Steve has set out really, is that, and you know, as members will have seen with 1 or 2 other applications before this committee, there is always a planning balance which ultimately is for members to judge. The planning officers and the landscape officers have judged the landscape harm at a moderate to low level. Just picking up on Councillor Stevenson's point, if members of the view that landscape harm is more significant at the more higher upper end of landscape harm, and balancing that with, you know, I think the benefits which we would have to accept, the level of weight is another question. But if we think there's significant landscape harm which does outweigh the benefits of new housing, the economic benefits in the additional affordable housing, then that would be I would agree with Neil's analysis, that legally would be a defendable decision. Some of the other issues which are being discussed are the potentially better sites in Cowden. That wouldn't come into it. We have to judge this planning application on its own merits. The surface water strategy, at the end of the day, I think that's a technical matter which could be handled by a planning condition. But the fundamental issue, I think, which I think members are homing in on actually, is to balance up the quality of the landscape against the benefits. And if there is a view that significant landscape harm would accrue, then I think that would be an understandable decision, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. I think we're clear now. Are you ready to vote?
Excuse me, Chair, just a little observation there. Obviously, we're moving into this new era of planning with this new demand of sort of numbers which the County Council have got to meet. And previous years, you know, maybe this sort of application coming forward with 2 red flags or whatever we want to describe them as, would probably have come to this committee with a refusal. However, due to the sort of the pressures which the County Council is going to be under, it's sort of, this is like, you know, as of today, it's come forward with the officer's recommendation for approval. Was this site put forward previously as for an allocated site, and was it sort of rejected? And has it just come forward as it's obviously come forward as a policy 6 site with an approval on it? It was just sort of an observation on the whole debate and the way it's going. But this is obviously, as I say, it's a new era, and I think sort of month in, month out, we're going to have sort of applications like this, that's without a shadow of doubt. And at the end of the day, and I know like there's lots of people in the chamber here, and no disrespect to the case officers and the planning team, but they are up against it, and they've got to, you know, nobody would want their job sitting up there as of today with the numbers what they've got to meet.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Do you want to answer that?
We're just checking that now.
Yeah, just being checked.
Thank you, Chair. Conveniently, we've got Mr. James Cook, our Planning Policy Manager, with us today, who's quickly looking through the file, much quicker than myself or Steve could. And the answer is, James?
We don't think it was put forward through the SLA in terms of the previous plan. Obviously, I think it was referenced that we're doing a call for sites at the moment. I mean, that's still ongoing, so we don't know whether it has been put forward or not as yet, and that's not in the public domain.
Thank you. Councillor Bell? Okay, yeah. So, no further comment. Are you ready to vote on the motion? All those that agree that the application should be refused? Unanimous. Right, we're ready to move on to the second application introduced by Callum.
Right, good afternoon members. Thank you, Chair. So the second application on today's agenda is for, it's a planning application for the erection of 137 dwellings and associated infrastructure at land northwest of Quilstall Road at Wheatley Hill. So just before I get into the main presentation, Chair, I do have a couple of quick updates. The first one is relation to the officer recommendation, paragraph 320 of the officer report. So there has been a typo. It should say that the proposal would provide 10% of affordable housing on site, not 15. So the affordable housing offer still comprises 7 discount market sale and 7 affordable rent units. So the scheme itself hasn't changed, it's just a typo in the report. The second update is regarding the legal agreement. So it would need to secure the biodiversity net gain monitoring fee, so just a technicality. And the third update, we have received an objection from Councillor Craggs. I believe it came through on Friday and it has been circulated. So Councillor Craggs does raise concerns regarding highway safety and the capacity of local schools, capacity of GP surgeries and capacities of dentists. Sorry, Chair, I'll wait for people to take their seat. Right, okay. So the main presentation, Chair, the first slide shows the application site in the context of Wheatley Hill. So the village is located off to the south and east of the site. Off to the north we have some open countryside with the village of Thornley further north. So the next slide shows a closer aerial photograph of the site. To the south of the site lies adjacent residential dwellings, and then to the east and west are allotments. And to the north is an agricultural field, which is also subject to a separate proposal for a new woodland plantation. So just flicking through the site photographs, Chair. First one is taken at Quillstyle Road to the south. So the members who were on the bus this morning will recognise this is where we parked up. So the proposed access point will be coming through this hedgerow. And the second photograph shows a viewpoint from the southwest corner from the public footpath. So this was the area where we stood when we got off the bus. And this is another photograph taken from the northeast corner. So this is looking back up the hill towards the point where we were standing this morning. And this photograph as well, Chair, so this is taken from the road just to the south of Thornley. So the application site is roughly in the mid-ground, and this photograph shows that this built development would be seen within the existing built context of Wheatley Hill, with those existing houses lying along the ridgeline. Also something to note as well, Chair, just beyond this pylon in the centre of the photograph, that's where the woodland plantation will be going as well. So the next slide shows the proposed scheme. So access would be sought from Quillstyle Road off to the southwest. The layout of the proposal is focused around a main drag running east-west through the site, and we also have a main loop stretching off to the northern part of the site. The proposal comprises a mix of 2, 3 and 4 bedroom houses and bungalows, and every property would have sufficient car parking and garden lengths. Pedestrian connections are proposed at the northeastern corner and along the western boundary. A drainage basin is proposed at the northeastern corner of the site, and the layout includes a number of swales along the main streets throughout the site. Public open spaces are also proposed across the site to help improve the character of the development. So turning next to affordable homes, this slide shows the location of the proposed 14 affordable dwellings. These comprise 7 discount market sale units and 7 affordable rent units. The Council's affordable housing officer supports the proposed affordable housing, recognising it would address both a local need and a county-wide need. So the next slide shows some visuals of the proposed dwellings. So these would be constructed of brick. The next slide, Chair, shows the proposed junction improvements. So the applicant is proposing a number of improvements at the Quillstyle Road, First Street and Woodlands Avenue junction, located off to the east of the application site. So officers are aware that this junction already causes issues, and the applicant is proposing to make a number of improvements to it as part of the proposed development. So just to summarise, the main improvements are carriageway widening, improving visibility displays for vehicles exiting Quillstyle Road and Woodlands Avenue, which are the 2 give-way junctions located at the bottom of the image, and also improvements to the zebra crossing at Woodlands Avenue, seen there towards the bottom right, to make it safer for pedestrians. So as mentioned on the minibus this morning, Chair, these works had been required by the highways officer, who has listened to the concerns raised by local residents, and the applicant has agreed to carry out those works. So in terms of consultations and representations, so this application has received a lot less public interest than the last one. We've received 21 letters of objection, and their concerns are raised, the concerns raised are summarised at paragraph 96 of the officer report. We've received no objections from consultees, subject to recommended conditions where relevant. The NHS and the Council's education team recommend that financial contributions be secured through a legal agreement should plan permission be granted. And as mentioned in the earlier update, we have also received an objection from Councillor Craggs, raising concerns regarding highway safety and the capacity of local schools, GP surgeries and dentists. So just flicking through the main concerns being raised, turning first to highways. Concerns have been raised by the public over the capacity of the local road network and over the safety of the proposed access onto Quilstall Road. The Highways Officer has been consulted, and following receipt of amended plans and further information, they make no objection, subject to recommended conditions. The updated layout and updated parking provision is considered acceptable, and officers consider the proposed layout is also acceptable in design terms. As shown earlier in the presentation, the applicant is seeking to upgrade the junction to the east at Quilstall Road, First Street and Woodlands Avenue. Officers seek to secure these measures through condition 15 at the bottom of the officer report. Turning next to trees. Some of the trees at the southern site boundary are covered by a tree preservation order. This was made by officers in response to concerns raised by a neighbouring resident. So the tree preservation order was made and confirmed, was prepared and confirmed following receipt of this planning application. The applicant has then responded to the protection of those trees by amending the layout to ensure their protection during the works. None of the trees covered by the tree preservation order would be lost as part of this proposal. Having said that, the trees at the southwestern edge of the site, which currently form a large hedgerow, would need to be removed to ensure an acceptable highway access. These trees aren't covered by the TPO. The trees officer has maintained some concerns with their loss, noting that they are of some visual value at a local level, but officers consider their loss as necessary to ensure a safe access into the site can be achieved. And last but not least, Chair, concerns have been raised regarding local schools and the capacity of the GP surgery and other local infrastructure such as dentists. So this is a common issue raised across many housing developments. So in respect to this application, officers recommend that a number of financial contributions be secured should members be minded to grant planning permission today. These amounts are listed on the slide, so totalling just over £1 million. It's worth noting, Chair, that these amounts can only be sought to mitigate the impacts created by this proposal. It's not reasonable for the Council to require the developer to pay a financial contribution to resolve existing capacity issues at local schools and GP surgeries. Therefore, the Council are unable to require a higher amount of money for this proposed scheme. So just, apologies, Chair. So just getting through to the summary. In terms of the principle of development, the application site is within the open countryside, and it is currently used as an agricultural field, and it is not allocated for housing in the County Durham plan. However, this site is deemed to be well related to the settlement, and it is deemed to be a sustainable location for development of this scale. The proposal would deliver 137 homes, including 14 affordable dwellings and a further 14 bungalows to help address the identified needs in County Durham. So turning first to the harms, we have an impact on the visual amenity of the landscape, but it is at a local level. There would also be an increase in traffic on the local road network, and the proposal would lead to the loss of the hedgerow, as mentioned before. The applicant has sought to reduce these harms as much as possible. Whilst these harms do remain, officers consider that the degree of weight that we can afford to them is only limited. So in the context of the benefits, Chair, as mentioned earlier, the proposal would deliver new housing, including affordable housing and bungalows to help address the county's needs. There would be economic benefits through the creation of jobs during the construction period, and there would also be an increase in footfall for local businesses once the dwellings are occupied. The proposal would also deliver a biodiversity net gain. So just to conclude, Chair, this application was submitted last year following favourable pre-application advice from officers, and the applicant has worked with officers to overcome some initial concerns regarding the layout and the impact on trees and securing drainage features across the site. Following the usual balancing exercise for housing developments of this scale, officers consider the proposal to be acceptable, In this instance, the identified benefits lead to a notable positive outcome in the wider Balancing Act. Officers therefore recommend that members approve this application, subject to entering into a legal agreement with the applicant and subject to the conditions listed at the bottom of the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Callum. Right, we have, first of all, we have a statement from the ward councillor. I know this has been circulated and has been put on the planning portal, but I'm not sure if the applicant has seen it, so I've suggested that it be read out by Kirsty so that everyone's clear on what he's saying. Kirsty?
Dear members of the Planning Committee, as the elected member for Thornley and Wheatley Hill, I wish to submit formal observations regarding the above application. My comments are based on local insight, ongoing dialogue with residents and first-hand knowledge of the area's infrastructure and community needs. While I am not opposed to new development in principle, I am concerned that this application does not adequately address the realities on the ground, particularly with regard to education provision, traffic impact, site access and community services. 1. Education capacity and misrepresentation of local provision. The developer's support and documentation appears to rely on generic assumptions regarding school capacity. In contrast, local schools in Wheatley Hill are currently facing serious pressure with existing facilities are over capacity, with sports halls repurposed as teaching spaces. Some pupils are reportedly being taught in temporary locations, including local community centres. Schools have submitted plans to expand, indicating that current capacity is already insufficient. The suggestion that local infrastructure can accommodate additional demand from 137 new dwellings is therefore not supported by actual conditions. 2. Healthcare and local community services, existing pressures and safety concerns. Local NHS services, including dental practices, GP surgeries and the community pharmacy, are already under significant strain with long waiting lists and difficulties securing timely appointments. These providers serve not only Wheatley Hill residents but a wider catchment across East Durham, and the proposed development will place additional pressure on these already stretched services. In addition, parking availability is a persistent issue in the area. Residents frequently report restrictive parking options alongside a high volume of traffic using back streets as shortcuts. This increases traffic movement significantly, creating unsafe conditions for pedestrians, especially children and the elderly. The application does not sufficiently address these concerns nor propose adequate measures to mitigate the impact of increased traffic on road safety and parking. 3. Inadequate consideration of realistic traffic routes and impacts. While the developer has acknowledged traffic impacts at Vincent's Corner in the road safety audit, the junction at Killstyle Road joining the B1279, this is unlikely to be the principal route used by most future residents. The more direct and commonly used route will be leaving the estate on Killstyle Road, turn right onto Henderson Avenue leading to Stoker Crescent to the junction for Wingate Lane, turning left or right towards the A181. The junction at Stoker Crescent, which connects Wingate Lane, is problematic and provides a major strategic route to Durham, Peterlee and Hartlepool. It already suffers from restricted visibility due to nearby buildings, congestion during peak travel times, no current proposals for mitigation. Despite its significance, this junction is not addressed in the assessment, which calls into question the completeness and credibility of the traffic modelling. 4. Single access point insufficient for the scale of the development. The proposed development relies on a single point of access and egress via Killstyle Road, situated within an already built-up area. This raises significant concerns relating to traffic congestion, particularly during school hours and peak commuting periods, access for emergency vehicles, service vehicles and deliveries, network resilience should any obstruction occur at the sole entry point. This configuration is not proportionate to the scale of the development and fails to meet modern expectations for sustainable and accessible design. 5. As a local councillor, my observations are grounded in real lived experience and the concerns of those I represent. I do not accept that technical reports alone should outweigh local knowledge. When parents are struggling to secure school places for their children, or when queues are forming daily on minor roads, it's clear that real infrastructure pressures exist. Too often developments are presented as sustainable on paper but fall short in practice. This proposal in its current form does not demonstrate sufficient regard for the cumulative impact on community services and infrastructure. Conclusion. I support sustainable development that is proportionate, properly planned and supported by robust infrastructure. However, this proposal raises multiple unresolved concerns that must be addressed before any approval is considered. Specifically, the lack of credible assessment of school capacity, the existing and additional pressures on healthcare services, including dentists, GP surgeries and the pharmacy, the failure to address parking and pedestrian safety issues, the failure to assess the most probable traffic routes and junctions, the over-reliance on a single point of access. Until these matters are transparently resolved and demonstrably compliant with both the MPPF and County Durham local plan, I do not believe this application should be supported. I therefore urge the committee to refuse or defer the application until these core issues are properly addressed.
Thank you, Kirsty. Now we have two gentlemen who wish to object, Mr. Alan Mole and Martin Dunn. Now, you have 5 minutes between you, so well, you can share the time between you how you like. I don't know who wants to start.
Alan's going to start. I want to start first.
We'll give you 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
Right,
your schools, dentists and doctors are all full. You can't get appointments. The school is chock-a-block. And when you go up where the school is, the parking up there is tremendous. But they're now starting to come and park on Quillstyle Road because of that. One of the main problems is the flow of traffic along there. It's a main bus route, and there's a load of traffic along there at any time of the day. One of the main problems is, again, is when the club has something on, the welfare club. Outside there, the houses park all alongside Quillstyle at both sides. At times, the buses can't even get through, never mind emergency vehicles. If there's a fire along our street some night, they'll never get to the houses. Next, I'll go to outside the back of the house. Wildlife. Has anybody considered the green little area outside of us, before the field even? We have rabbits, we have hedgehogs, pheasants and partridges, and numerous butterflies, which are strange these days to have butterflies around. I think that needs to be considered, the space between our site and theirs. Wildlife road, let's look at that. Quillstyle Road is a very busy route. When the football matches are on at the top, where your bus was parked this morning, because I saw it before I came to the committee, that is normally stowed off on a Saturday and Sunday morning with cars at the football field. Has anybody been there on a Saturday and Sunday morning? No, you went at a time when it was quiet, nothing busy. I hope you also looked at all the letters from all of the other people that have put in, all the complaints. You'll find most of it's the same, because we all agree that this site is not a site that should be proposed. It has been used as farmland for years and years and years, and suddenly it's not in the county plan, as you've already said in there. It suddenly now becomes a building plot. Why? What's the problem? We want land to grow food on in this country. We don't want multitude of houses. And these so-called housing that you see are for other people. I don't think as many people in the village will move into them. And as far as you've done the roadworks along that end of the village, I'm sorry, that's a waste of time. Where they're coming out of the estate is the little bit at the top of Quillstyle Road, and that's where the traffic will be at its worst. I'm asking, have you asked the police to see if they agree with any of the proposals? Because that, to me...
2.5 minutes remaining.
Right, go on. Right. Hello, my name's Martin. I'm born and grew up in Quillstyle Road, not just Whaley Hill, but Quillstyle Road, so I know the area very, very well. Due to only having 2.5 minutes time limit, I'm going to limit my sort of objections to 2 points. Like Councillor Craggs, I've got real-time experience of living in Whaley Hill. I understand what's going on, unlike the Gleason's reports and plans, which are inaccurate and give false info based on assumptions. Number one, traffic. There's one entrance and exit to this proposed development, and that's going to from Quillstyles, from
in and out of Quilstyle Road. 130, just consider this please, if you will, 137 houses, okay? Work on one vehicle per household, okay? Vehicle in, vehicle out, that's nearly 300 vehicle movements per day onto Quilstyle Road through one entrance and exit. Quilstyle Road, as Alan has already said, is a main bus route for Durham and Sunderland through Wheatley Hill. It's busy all the time. It also has vehicles going to local amenities from Marley Fields. So the new development on the top of Wheatley Hill, a lot of vehicles come down through Henderson Avenue, down onto Quilstyle Road to get to the Co-op, which is the main supermarket in Wheatley Hill. So it's already loaded with vehicles from Marley Field. That road, Quilstyle Road, already has speed bumps on that road and chicanes to slow the amount of traffic down because it's that heavy. As Councillor Craggs has already highlighted in his objection, Vincent's Corner, which was the planned modification of the junction by Gleeson's, it's irrelevant because the vast majority of traffic, as Councillor Craggs and Alan's already highlighted, will not go that way. They will go up Henderson Avenue and Quetlow Road to get onto what we call the Pit Pony Roundabout. Because if you go Vincent's Corner way, you can't get onto the A181, which is the main route to Sunderland and Durham, because the junction is that dangerous. Okay, so what Gleeson's are planning on that corner is irrelevant because that is not the main route vehicles use. I know, I live there.
30 seconds remaining.
Okay, yeah, so quickly, just pressure on local amenities. Since 2017, there's been, in Wheatley Hill, there's been 23 bungalows built. There's been 106 houses built in Marley Fields. There's plans at the moment, which the first one is passed, for 73 houses in Peatley Cottages, 64 additional houses in Marley Fields, and 71 north of Marley Field. And there's not been any improvement to the facilities or amenities in Wheatley Hill with all those properties being built.
I think that means your time's up. Is that right? Sorry, we'll have to leave that there, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we have a representative for the applicant, Mr. Chris Dodds. You have 5 minutes to speak.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be very brief, Chair. My name is Chris Dodds. I'm Land Director at Gleeson. I don't really want to add anything further than what's obviously in your committee report and has been presented by the planning officer today, but other than just really to say we hope you go along with the officer recommendation, and I'm here as representative of Gleeson should there be any questions through the course of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Callum, do you want to come back on any of the points raised?
Yes, Chair. Once I get my sheets of paper sorted. Right, so a number of points have been raised. I mean, just to quickly say, Chair, they've already been covered in the officer report. In terms of school capacity, we have been looking at this in greater detail, and I did have a very good conversation with the education officer yesterday around the capacity of Wheatley Hill Primary School and Fawnley, and also St Godric's Primary, which is located just to the northeast of this site. So we recognise that there are currently a high roll number of students at Wheatley Hill Primary, but the education officer was saying that because of how close Fawnley Primary is, Fawnley does have quite a bit of capacity. So the education officer is advising that we cannot reasonably seek money to extend Wheatley Hill because of how close Fawnley is. In terms of St Godric's, I'm conscious there is some capacity there as well. Because it's a faith school, unfortunately officers can't take that into consideration. In terms of the GP surgery, so I have consulted the NHS and they've came back requesting a sum of money towards extending local GP surgeries. In terms of highways, we have the highways officer David here, if members have any detailed queries on that. In terms of the ecological impact, so as mentioned before, we would be securing a 10% biodiversity net gain. And the ecology officer has not raised any concerns with protected species subject to mitigation measures which are secured by conditions. I have discussed the scheme with the police and they have raised no objections. And in terms of agricultural land, the site is classed as grade 3B, which is not the best and most versatile agricultural land share, so we can't really give it too much weight. Hope that helps, but if members have any questions, happy to help.
So it's over to the members now for questions. Councillor Franklin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. One question I have is, affordable homes, what are the prices of homes going to be? Is it a national, like set nationally? Because we know in East Durham, a national price, people wouldn't be able to afford it. Is it going to be set to a local affordability or not? Another one is that A181, being from Peterlee, I know what that junction's like, what members of the public here are saying and what Councillor Craggs has said. Using that junction, when you come to it, you feel like you're putting your life in your hands trying to get out, because that road is really busy, and being a 60-mile-an-hour road, you have cars that are going well over that speed. And then to the east of that, you've got, even though it's not built yet, you've got a popular garage that's used by people from Seaham, Blackhall, all over, because of cheap fuel prices. So when that's built, that's going to put pressure on that road as well.
Thank you, Councillor Franklin. I think there are two people perhaps can answer that. If we go first to the applicant, if you've got anything to say about pricing of the properties.
Well, obviously, the affordable housing proposes a 50-50 split between affordable rent and discounted sale. So, in terms of the affordable rent, we'll seek to dispose of them to a registered provider, and they'll be kind of stipulated they'll be affordable rent only in perpetuity. In terms of the discounted sale units, I think you're probably aware that obviously Durham have a policy around a cap on discounted sale units. So we've gone through the process of providing a market report, and it's been determined that with a 20% discount to market value, those discounted units can be sold below that cap. Hopefully that answers it from our point of view.
Does that answer it for you, Councillor Franklin? Does that answer the pricing question for you? Yeah. And we have someone for Highways, David Batterby. You can deal with the traffic issues. I think you'll be busy on this one.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we're aware that the junction of the A181 and Woodlands Avenue is a busy junction, and that was modelled as part of the transport assessment which we required the developer to provide. That assessment was scrutinised, and whilst it does show that there is delay, which represents the current situation, the amount of additional traffic that this development will produce show that the extra delay is minimal. It is a busy road. We know that, and I've dealt with councillors over many years with regards to that. But that junction does meet the design standards and has adequate visibility for the speed of road. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Councillor Franklin? Callum, you want to add something there?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. So just on the back of what the Highways Office has advised, from my perspective as as the case officer in planning, what I'm looking at is the NPPF. So this is the national guidance set down by the government. In terms of highway safety impacts, what they say is that basically a planning application should only be refused if officers have identified a significant adverse impact in terms of highway safety, in terms of the capacity of the local road network. I think, I recognise there's going to be more dwellings, I recognise there's going to be more traffic on the roads, but officers do not feel there would be a significant adverse impact. So it's got to meet that test to be a reasonable reason for refusal. And I recognise the local residents will have a view on that, but in respect of the officers, we don't feel it meets that test.
Thank you. Councillor Bellingham and then Councillor Catchpole.
Thank you, Chair. I get all that's been said, but again, obviously, people on the ground, I travel that road and around that area quite often myself, and there is no significant impact. Again, I think that's just a subjective thing. But could we perhaps, and I know it's not for the applicant, I know it's probably something for us in Durham County Council to do, so look at improving highway management around that area. I know that the member for Wheatley Hill has been requesting this on a number of occasions, and maybe work for the future to try and eliminate some of these concerns, because it may also add into the fact that the school, Wheatley Hill School, is full, and the move to Thornley School, it might kill two birds with one stone.
Thank you. Steve, are you going to... Steve.
Chair, thank you. Yeah, I think as Callum set out, and again, I respect the view of the residents, but as with any planning decision we make, you know, we have to make it in a quasi-judicial manner, which means having to have regard to national planning advice and planning appeal decisions. And, you know, I think Dave, the highways guy, will back me up here. The amount of traffic going through the roads on Wheatley Hill is significantly less than some of the main towns across the county, and the honest answer is we'd have no chance of planning appeal if we'd try and refuse this on congestion. But I think on Dawn's point there, Chair, I'm more than happy to take that away and offer the local member a general strategic meeting, potentially with Dave and Dave Lewin, who's my opposite number in charge of strategic traffic matters around the county. We can't factor, you know, we would get nowhere raising this as a concern on this particular planning application, to be frank. But on the broader issue, I'm sure Dave and Dave Lewin would be happy to arrange a time to meet with the local member.
Thank you.
Do you need to add anything, Dave?
No, nothing, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Catchpole.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of points, really. First of all, was on the educational side of things. We didn't discuss secondary. We discussed plenty of primary, but no secondary issues, and I think that secondaries are full, as are the special needs.
Yep, Chair. So on the secondary and on the SEND, we acknowledge that there are capacity issues, so we are seeking financial contributions toward those two. But I think the sticking point with local residents has been the primary school, where we aren't seeking any money. But we are seeking money towards Wellfield School and to SEND provision as well.
I understand the sticking point, yeah. I just want to really focus on the secondary school and the special needs, because what plans are in place, or what plans will mitigate the need. Yeah, because at the moment they're full. If all of a sudden we actually ask that there's more capacity going to be going in there, and they can't support that, that means they're going elsewhere, and that's further afield. The second point is on the construction for that particular traffic management portion. Yeah, if we're going to be constructing and actually doing roadworks around there, have we factored that into the modelling? Yeah, because already that road is busy already. If all of a sudden there's construction going in and they're reducing the lanes down potentially, or there's some sort of traffic management going on there, has that been modelled in as well?
Yep, Chair. So just on the secondary, what we are doing is we're seeking a financial contribution. It's quite a hefty sum of money. What the education team would then do, they would pool that, and they would then look to extend Wellfield High School with that money. But that would be down to the education team to decide exactly how they're going to spend it and when they're going to spend it. I suppose for my role in planning, we would just secure the money, and then we'd hand it over to education, and then they would look to use it to extend Wellfield High School. In terms of the traffic management, Dave, do you want to come in on that, if that's all right?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the modelling of the traffic impact, that takes into account all of committed developments that are proposed, so that the developments that are in the process and have been just built out are all taken into account and are all part of that modelling, so that it provides a worst case scenario of this development, and includes all of the main network junctions which are likely to be impacted. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkes.
Sorry, Chair, can I just
pardon me, Councillor Wilkes. Councillor Catchwell, I was just going to
Sorry, can I just
follow
counter
up.
that with regards to traffic management? So that won't factor in the construction.
The construction's only a temporary situation and is held under...
So do we have a timeline for that? Temporary?
It is part of a condition that they provide a construction management plan with various constraints within that.
See where I'm going with this, though? If all the...
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Do you see where I'm going with this? If all of a sudden that construction lasts for 12 months, for 18 months, yeah, and it's road remediation that needs doing, all of a sudden the impact on that location will be exacerbated massively.
Construction's always difficult with regards to particular areas, but it is only a temporary measure. It is only a temporary for the duration of the build-out, and you don't take that into account because the result is, after it's been built out, the traffic system will relate back to a normal base flow. So the construction will give it a bit of a peak, but most of the construction traffic is outside of the peak hours, which we look at for the analysis and impact of the junctions. So we attempt to avoid as much impact as possible by the conditions that we place through the construction management plan.
Thank you, Dave. I think we've gone as far as we can on that one. Councillor Wilkes?
Thanks, Chair. I just want, I mean, in relation to the education side of things, I was very confused to see on the portal that we appeared to be identifying, or rather whoever had posted the details on there, that it was actually in concert. And I think somebody should just check when we're putting stuff onto the portals, because it was very specific that it said that the development was in the Concert School planning area and in North Durham, in both occasions that it was put on the website over the 2-year period of all of this. And I can understand and sympathise with people who might want their kids to go to the village that they live in. But obviously when you look at a catchment area and you've got 3 schools, you can understand why there is clearly capacity within the 3 schools, but obviously not within that one particular school. I've also got a lot of sympathy for the A181 issue. That speed limit should have been reduced decades ago. It's horrendous. But obviously, as officers have said, it's outside of the outside of us to really consider here today. But somebody, as you say, needs to look at it because it's dangerous. My bigger issue, to be honest, which hasn't been mentioned, is with the actual development itself and the quality of it. The actual inside of the site, not the highways outside of the site. We've got planning policies for a reason. We've got a supplementary planning document that talks about, and I'm going to read it because I really need to understand why there's been no comment from Highways whatsoever about this. Because we need to know that we've got estates where you can actually get vehicles through, where you can walk on the pavement, where emergency vehicles can actually get to somebody's house. And our design guidelines within that supplementary planning document at 4.12 say development proposals need to balance parking provision, its location and layout with the overall aim of good design and attractive and safe places. A number of solutions should be utilised to prevent impact on the quality of the street scene and avoid random parking on the pavement. An excessive use of one type of parking, for example tandem parking, i.e. one car parked behind the other on driveways, is discouraged. This is a poor design solution which has the potential to increase on-street parking at detriment to the attractiveness of the development, safety of cyclists and pedestrians. Tandem car parking arrangements can form part of a development. Let me find the next bit. But that should not be, you know, that should not be the actual majority of what's on a site. Now, and that's the policy. So we've got 137 houses, and for my count, around about 6 don't have tandem parking. Quite a few have got garage, parking space, in a line. So you've got a family on some of these houses, car, going to park one in the garage, we're going to park one on the drive, we're going to park one behind the other one on the drive. That's not what our policy says. It's very specific that we should not be doing this. And when you look at how narrow the roads are on this estate and some of these little cul-de-sacs they've put in where there's 5 or 6 houses with only maybe 2 places you could put a car off the driveway, it's going to be a car park. The whole of this site is going to be a car park. And I'm sorry to say, but I won't be supporting it. I'll listen to what anyone else has got to say. But on the highways issues of the inside of that site, it does not conform with County Durham policy at all.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkes. Dave, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. The design of the estate does actually meet our parking SPD. It provides the required number of parking spaces and the required number of non-allocated visitor parking spaces. There is a balance to be taken in terms of street scene and parking provision. It's always a battle between highways and the design to get a street scene that isn't dominated by parking spaces. So double-length driveways is one of the options to alleviate that in terms of providing green space in front of the properties, and we acknowledge that. And contrary to the comments, the number of dwellings units on the estate that have that don't have a double-length drive is 42, which is about 30% of the parking of the units. So that's not an excessive amount as per what the guidance in our SPD provides. So that is acceptable. But one of the other advantages of having the 2-length drives and the grass at the front is in the future, when perhaps people get more cars, there's the opportunity for the driveway to be widened and an additional space to be provided in the frontage, which will take the vehicles off the road. The roads themselves are 5.5 metres in width, which is as per our design standard. It increases where there's too tight radii, which was at the request of the Highway Authority. And I think the narrow drives Councillor Wilkes is talking about are the private shared drives, which are not adopted. So all in all, it meets our SPD, it meets what we're asked to provide, and to refuse it on that account would not meet the stringent requirements of the MPPF. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Steve?
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back on a specific point, please? It's disingenuous to say that there's 42 properties on there where there isn't back-to-back parking, because those are the properties where legally you don't need that many because they're only 2 or 3 bedroom properties. There are, if you look across the whole site, there are only about 6 or 7 properties with car parking next to each other rather than parked behind. So it's not fair to say there's 42 properties. That's because they're the smaller properties and don't require as much parking under the standards.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkes. Steve, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And again, look, I mean, I think in general it's probably just worth reminding members that when we produced the SPD, I think I'm going back 2 years ago now, and I remember a number of discussions with Councillor Wilkes when he was a cabinet member at the time. I think officers were clear to Councillor Wilkes that this was a guideline. It wasn't a black and white 100% thing. And that, as with a number of SPD policies, there does need to be some flexibility. I think on the percentage figures that Dave Battlesby has set out there, you know, I think we're well within the tolerance figures. And it's probably worth mentioning as well, Dave, it's my understanding, I think one of Councillor Wilkes' points was about the narrowness of the roads, which I recall the SPD did increase our standard road widths a couple of years ago when we brought the SPD in. And it is my understanding, just from talking to Callum here as well, that the road widths here are larger as a result of the new SPD. So, you know, the congestion on the estate point, which I think all highways officers who engaged with Councillor Wilkes at the time did accept was a fair point that needed address. It's my understanding, Dave, that that point will have been picked up on this planning application coming in as it's done under the new SPD, I think.
That's correct. The roads within the estate are 5.5 metres as required by our SPD.
Thank you. Any further? James?
Yeah, my quick question was really, why are you bringing the entrance onto Quilstyle Road and not onto Thornley Road at the top end? Obviously, a lot of the concerns about heavy traffic with the football, you know, with the Worker Men's Club, and then obviously coming down onto that main road. If the entrance into the site was from the north, the traffic would naturally come through the village, and traffic going north could go up to Thornley, rather than all coming through this heavy built-up area.
Thank you. I think, Steve, you wanted... Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yep, Chair. So this was queried with the developer at an early stage of this application. So the developer doesn't have the option, the land option, to seek an access from the northeast. So it's land outside of their control. So my understanding is they've got a land option with the farmer who owns the field. But to get an access off onto First Avenue to the northeast, it has to go across another party's land. So the only option available to the developer at the minute is to come off a Quilstyle Road as proposed.
Yes, Louise.
Although you say that it would be unfair for the developer to pay the costs to doing any traffic management down on the A181, how come it's acceptable for them to be paying for development further up at the other junction? That's point number one. The second point is you mentioned that Thornley Primary School is within 2 miles. It is, but that is a 29-minute walk, and that's walking at adult pace. If you're walking with a 4-year-old or even an 11-year-old, that 29-minute walk soon becomes 45 minutes or even an hour, which is a massive struggle for any family.
Yep, Chair. So both valid points. I think on the highways, I'll defer to David again if that's all right. On the walking distance to Thornley Primary, so again, I'm taking advice from the education team. They have this 2-mile walking policy. So that's what we have to look at this application in the context of today. If members have concerns with that 2-mile policy, they could raise it with the education team, but it would have to be separate from today's committee meeting.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the improvements of the highway, one of the aspects that we have to look at is is it necessary to enable the development so that we can justify requiring the additional works. Being aware of the area for many years, I knew that the visibility on Vincent's Corner was quite difficult coming from Quilstyle Road. So with that in mind, that was part of the reason why I'd worked extremely hard with the developer to establish a scheme to improve the visibility at that junction and improve the layout of it, because it is a substandard layout. With regards to the A181 junction, we're probably looking at in excess of £1 million to improve that junction, perhaps by around about, you're probably looking at £1.5 to £2 million. There's absolutely no way we could justify a demand on a developer of a development of 137 dwellings to pay for such an improvement, given the minimal additional impact it's going to have on that junction over the existing flows. So I hope that explains why we've gone for Vincent's Corner.
Thank you, Dave. No, nothing to add. Any further questions? Do you want to move into debate now? No, I think we're leaving it to the members now to debate. Yeah. Thank you. Please, that's the guidelines for today. That's how we deal with it here. So just be patient. So, debate. Dawn?
Yeah, I think it's clear that we have highways issues all the way through this report, and I know what statutory guidelines say and what is actually reflected with regards to on the ground. I think that is a big issue. What I would certainly like to see is our highways officers from Durham County Council to give, you know, promise really that they are going to work with the local member for that area in order to try and make improvements. I know that Steve said that it's not mandatory for them to do that, but clearly that nearly every issue that's been picked up, including the distance between the Thornley School and that proposal of that estate, could be you know, something that's going to improve that situation. So I do think we should be considering what we could do in the future, even though it doesn't necessarily materially link to this application.
Thank you, Dawn. I think, Steve, did you want to add something in response?
Quickly, Chair. Yes, again, I think that's a valid point from Councillor Bellingham there. As members will be aware, we've commenced in a new County Durham plan. As part of that, we'll have to update and refresh all our individual planning guidance notes, including the one on developer contributions. So in terms of asking where and for how much we ask money, we asked for developers off money through Section 106 agreements. On Councillor Pender's point there about the walk into school, that may well be a valid point, but again, I think the point that Callum set out, this planning application today has got to be considered under the development plan policies in place at present, including our education SPD, and if the walk into school distance is being signed off through existing council policy as acceptable, I think the honest answer is we'll be on a very rocky road to go against it today. But certainly on Dawn's point, I think these are points which we do need to listen to and take forward as part of future policy formulation. And just to reaffirm what I said before in terms of the highways point that the local members raised, again, we really can't hold that against this planning application, which, as Dave has said, will have a negligible impact in terms of the number of vehicles on there. It's a pre-existing issue. It's been around for a number of years. But we'll certainly take that away with Dave Lewin and offer to meet with the local members as soon as we can, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Catchpole.
Thank you, Chair. One for the officer. With regards to the 106 and the contributions on the secondary school, yeah, you said that your job was to basically secure 106 funds, and then it goes to the education team. Yeah. Where basically they could turn around and say, well, actually, it's going to cost £1 million and that we haven't got that money, so we won't do it. Isn't that the wrong way around? Shouldn't you be approaching the education team first? I'm sorry to interrupt there. Should we be approaching the education team first to ascertain the price of the project and then approaching the development company for the 106 funds?
So in terms of how the education contributions are calculated, we can only calculate them per dwelling. So what members will find over the next few committees will have certain amounts being sought based on the scale of development. So 200 houses would equal X, 100 houses would equal X. So in this instance, the education team are saying a scheme for 137 dwellings in this location would equal the amount of money that they're seeking. That money would then be put into a pot. And I've no doubt there'll be other housing sites coming forward in East Durham which feed into Wellfield. And then the pot will get to a certain amount where the education team then spend it on extending Wellfield High School. I don't know the exact cost of that project because I don't work in that team, unfortunately. But I hope it answers the question.
Thank you. Are we ready to move this along? Anybody got any proposals? Councillor Freeman.
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussion about highways and education. I think members of the committee are generally unhappy, but I appreciate that we work within the report that's in front of us and that there is substantial Section 106 funding going towards education. Any highways issues in the village cannot be resolved by one planning application. That's unreasonable. And the application itself does have some merit in that it is providing housing in general, but also some affordable housing. So I would like to recommend approval of the application.
Thank you. Anybody seconding? Councillor Shulman, you second that? Thank you. Can we put it to a vote then? All those in favour of the application? That's 4. All those against? 5. I've heard everything regarding the harms that this development could give, but to be quite fair, I don't think they outweigh the need for further housing. Can we please take the vote again? Those in favour? 4. Thank you. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. So that motion's lost. The application.
Thank you, Chair. So clearly the motion for approval in accordance with the officer recommendation has been lost on a vote now. So it's back to members to decide whether they want to put forward an alternative motion, which can then be seconded and voted on in the usual way.
Councillor Freeman.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate, I mean, however unhappy members are, there are no policy grounds that I see to reject this application, and then therefore to continue to object to this application will very, very likely lead to an appeal decision which will be lost because there are no substantial policy grounds to refuse this application. This is a situation we have often got ourselves into in the planning committees over all of my time as a councillor. Sometimes we end up having to approve things which we perhaps do have some concerns about, but which the policy that we work within doesn't really allow us to object to applications. So I would ask for members to perhaps sort of reconsider, because if they can't come up with some solid policy grounds, then we really can't proceed to reject this application.
Councillor Catchpole.
Yeah, hi, Chair. I'm not convinced by the education and the Section 106. Yeah, I'd like to defer based upon the Section 106 so you can come back with a report which actually says that we will deliver this. Yeah, I'm not convinced by the fact that we need to have 3, 4, 5 developments, yeah, to then prove that that money can be spent. I think what we need to do is have more joined up thinking with regards to that money, yeah, and the infrastructural change that's required.
Thank you. I think we are left in a situation where we have to look at the question of deferral. So all those in favour of deferring?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion carried. Thank you. Has Councillor Freeman left, or has he gone for a break? Okay. Well, okay, given that, we'll carry on to the third application. Callum, over to you.
Right, Chair. So the next application on the agenda, item 5C, is for the erection of a retail warehouse comprising up to 3 retail units, together with access, servicing arrangements, car parking, landscaping and associated works. And the site is located to the east of Unit 7 on Dragonville Retail Park, Dragon Lane, Durham. So just before I get into the main presentation, I do have a couple of quick updates again. This is relating to biodiversity and again. So following the publication of the officer report, I've had confirmation from the legal team that we don't need a legal agreement to secure the proposed on-site biodiversity gain measures. This is because the proposed on-site habitats are not significant, either in scale or in nature. So the B&G can instead be secured through conditions. So there will be 5 new conditions added to the recommendation, and these relate to a biodiversity gain plan, a habitat management and monitoring plan, and securing the long-term maintenance and monitoring of that plan over a 30-year period. So these are standard conditions, Chair. So just getting into the main presentation, the first slide shows the site in the context of Durham City. So the city centre is located off to the left of the image, and the application site is shown in red on the right-hand side of the photograph. And then just on the just to the further right of the site is the A1. So a more close-up aerial photograph of the site. So the site is previously developed land, having previously been used as a factory, which was cleared in the early 2000s. To the west and north are retail units, whilst to the east is an industrial premises, and to the south are residential dwellings. So the image on the board shows a red line and a blue line. The red line encloses the application site, whilst the blue line encloses the adjacent retail unit to the north, which is a Home Bargains, and that land is within the applicant's control. So just moving through the site photographs, Chair. The first 2 are taken from the cross junction off to the southwest. So this is the junction between Dragon Lane and the A181. And this shows the existing housing to the south and the adjacent hedgerow. And this is the existing junction into the site, so members on the bus would have seen this as we drove past. And these are some photographs of the site. So the photo on the left shows the southwestern corner, and the photo on the right shows the centre of the site looking east. And some further photos from the western site boundary. So you've got Dragon Lane on the left-hand side, and then you've got Home Bargains just off to the north. So the next slide shows the proposed scheme. The proposal comprises 1 large building, which would be split internally into 3 separate retail units. The application indicates that the largest of these units would be used as an Aldi. Access will be sought from the existing junction onto the A181, shown at the top right of this drawing. And the proposed car park has been designed to integrate with the Home Bargains car park to the north, which is shown on the left-hand side of this image. Replacement planting is proposed in the southwestern part of the site, so this is indicated in the blue, orange, purple and light green areas off on the right-hand side of the site. The darker green areas at the top right, these indicate existing trees which would be retained. So we're just going through the site elevations. This slide shows the western, eastern and southern elevations. So the building would be of a similar height to Home Bargains to the north, and it would be constructed of red brick and grey cladding to match the Home Bargains to the north. So the top drawing shows the western elevation, which would face onto the proposed car park and onto Dragon Lane, so this would be the front elevation. The middle drawing shows the eastern rear elevation, which would face onto the service yard to the rear, and you're probably not going to see this from any public vantage points. And then the bottom drawing shows the southern gable elevation, so you would see this elevation as you come into the site. So in terms of consultations and representations, we have had a low level of public interest in this. We do have one letter of objection from the public raising concerns with the increase in traffic and the impact on the amenity of neighbouring residents to the south. Belmont Parish Council have also commented on the application. Whilst they are generally supportive of the proposal, they still raise concerns with the increase in traffic and have requested that more roof-mounted solar panels be secured than those already proposed. We have no objections from other consultees, subject to recommended conditions where relevant. Apologies, Chair, this computer keeps jumping further ahead. Right, so the principal development. So the application site is in a sustainable location and it is within the built-up area of Durham City. The site was previously built upon and it benefits from a fallback position in that there is an extant outline planning consent for a retail-led development on this site. The proposal is unlikely to lead to a significant adverse impact on the vitality and viability of Durham City Centre or the Dragonville Sherburn Road Retail Centre or the Arneson Centre. So the proposal would also create jobs during the construction period and create jobs during the operation of the proposed retail units. The proposal would deliver BNG through additional conditions as mentioned in the earlier update. The scale and design of the proposal would also be in keeping with the character of the surrounding area. Ultimately, it's a retail park. And subject to recommended conditions, the proposal would not lead to an adverse impact on the amenity of the nearest residential dwellings. So for the reasons given, the proposal is considered acceptable and officers therefore recommend that members approve this application subject to the conditions listed at the bottom of the officer report as well as the additional conditions relating to biodiversity net gain. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Callum. We have one speaker on the list, Mr. Adrian Fox, who's speaking for the applicant.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the Planning Committee. My name is Adrian Fox. I'm the agent acting on behalf of the applicant TJ Morris Limited. We've worked closely and collaboratively with your officers from pre-application stage up to this committee, and we have fully endorsed your officer's recommendation to grant plan permission for this next phase of development at Dragon Lane. The application relates to a prominent site that has long been identified as suitable for large format retailing. Indeed, planning permission was granted in 2004 for retail-led development, providing over 9,000 square metres of new retail floor space. This permission has been part implemented and provides an important fallback position in the consideration of the current applications before you today, as has been acknowledged by your officers. The location suitability for retailing has been further demonstrated by planning permission being granted in 2022 to deliver the new Home Bargains adjacent to the application site, which is open and trading. The principle of retail development in this location has therefore long been accepted. The application before you today represents the next phase of development at this prominent location, immediately at the edge of Dragonville Sherburn Road District Centre that is widely accessible. The proposals will retain and create a significant number of new jobs that will be available to local residents. It represents major direct and indirect private sector investment in the local economy, a good news story for Durham. In planning policy terms, all relevant matters have been fully addressed and your officers have found the proposals to be entirely acceptable, as confirmed by the positive recommendation. This includes no objection being raised by the Highway Authority or National Highways. In terms of the principle, as highlighted, the site already benefits from an existing plan permission for substantial retail development. Nevertheless, as part of this application, the relevant retail tests have been fully assessed and satisfied. The Council's spatial policy team has acknowledged that no alternative site exists to accommodate the proposed development, and the proposals will not lead to a significant adverse impact on planned investment on the long-term vitality and viability of neighbouring centres. To further mitigate any impact, planning conditions have been agreed with officers to control the range of goods that will be permitted to be sold. Furthermore, the site's location at the immediate edge of the defined district centre means that the development will function as part of the defined centre, enhancing its retail offer and increasing footfall. This has already been demonstrated by the recent opening of the neighbouring Home Bargains. In addition, the proposal will facilitate the retention and upsizing of a key retailer, Aldi, that is currently trading locally. Whilst the existing Aldi at Dragonville Retail Park, which is less than 100 metres from the application site, is trading well, it does not provide a long-term viable location for the operator. This store is highly constrained in terms of its size and fails to provide the full product range now expected by its customers. By contrast, the application site provides the opportunity to deliver a much larger store and, importantly, ensure that this key retailer retains their presence within the district centre, rather than having to relocate further afield due to the lack of other opportunities available. The remaining floor space will be restricted to bulky non-food retailers in line with that which can already be delivered under the existing 2004 permission. Such retailers will complement the existing district centre offer. In terms of design, landscaping comments received during the determination of the application have all been considered and, where possible, changes incorporated within the revised proposals supported by your officers. Overall, the proposal will deliver a high-quality, sustainable, modern retail development that will enhance the overall offer of the district centre in a location that is long accepted as appropriate for this type of development. Should your officer's recommendation not be supported, in the absence of any alternative scheme, the full potential of this site will not be realised. This will result in the site continuing to remain vacant, bringing no benefit to the local community. By contrast, the proposals before you represent a viable and deliverable scheme being supported by an existing retailer looking to strengthen their offer in the local area. The applicant is ready to start works immediately. The application proposal will retain and deliver new jobs and investment at a time when economic growth is greatly needed. To conclude, we would like to make the following important points. 1. The application is supported by all statutory consultees. 2. Officers agree that the proposals are entirely acceptable when considered against relevant planning policy. 3. If approved, the proposals will give rise to significant benefits, including securing the long-term occupancy and improvement of a prominent site that is vacant and in poor state of repair has long been identified as suitable for retailing. The retention and creation of jobs through both the operative phase, around 100 jobs, together with additional jobs created during the construction phase, and represents substantial private sector investment in the local economy in the region of more than £10 million. It also will retain the key retailer Aldi in the Dragonville-Sherburn Road area and the introduction of additional retailing, improving consumer choice and competition for the benefit of local residents. These benefits are significant and should be afforded substantial weight in the determination of planning application. We therefore strongly urge you to support your officer's recommendation and grant planning permission for the final phase of development and fully deliver the benefits of this site. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much. If we can just go over to members now for questions. Councillor Wilkes.
Thanks, Chair. This site's been an absolute dump for as long as I can remember. And I don't know who's owned it over the period of time that it's been a dump. Might be more than 1 year, but I'm glad that something's going to finally be done because it's been a disgrace. I'd like to ask a question of officers about Policy 9 regarding city centres. And I guess it's a case of at what point would we say any further out-of-town development in Durham City was not acceptable because of its impact on the city centre?
Thank you. Callum?
Yep, Chair. As it so happens, the policy officer who was involved in this application is in the chamber today, so that's good luck. In terms of hypothetical scenarios for future schemes, I don't know if I can really comment on that, Chair, from a procedural ground. We can only look at the application before us. If a scheme comes in the future and it is going to harm the city centre, if it's going to harm Dragonville, if it's going to harm the Arneson, then we'll look at that at that point in time. I don't know if James wants to add any more to that.
Yeah, I think you're right, Callum. I think it would be a case-by-case basis. I think in terms of this application, we've looked at the potential end users here. So we know one of them is Aldi, the other two are going to be bulky goods retailers. And we've looked at that in terms of the current retailers within Durham City Centre. And we don't believe that the impact would be significantly adverse, given that really we don't have a sort of a main floor play retailer within food retailer within the town centre, and it doesn't really offer bulky goods retailing either. So it's it is a case-by-case basis, but the specifics of this would suggest that the impacts on the city centre would not be significantly adverse, which is the key policy test.
Thanks, Chair. Unless nobody has a comment, I'd recommend moving approval.
Thank you. I'll just take a question from Councillor Bellingham.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was just going to say I can't really see any material factor here to not support this application. So I know that Councillor Wilkes got in there, but so that it basically it improves the amenities in my mind with regards to what's already there. A really good thing is there's going to be another way in, another route into that that actual retail estate, which is a good move. So I'd like to support the recommendation for this application.
So you're moving approval?
Approval.
And do we have a seconder? Thank you. Put it to the vote. All those in favour? Great, unanimous, thank you. Right, Louisa, you ready to roll?
Thank you, Chair. I'll try not to keep you too much longer. So this application's for the proposal for the demolition of the existing school building and development of a replacement school, along with car parking, hard and soft landscaping, playing pitches and access arrangements at Framwood School at Framwood Moor. So I do have some updates for committee. Sport England have been in touch and have requested that condition 14 be changed to a compliance condition. The wording's outlined above. It's quite a long condition, so I won't repeat it now, but I'll give you a chance to have a look at it. Also, paragraph 110 needs to refer to the streets of Newton Drive, Carside and Akeley Road being the streets affected by current on-street parking issues, and that was raised by a local resident. So this is the location plan with the overall current school site outlined in red. The application site is located between the settlements of Framwood Moor and Newton Hall, approximately just over 1 mile north of Durham City Centre. The site encompasses teaching facilities with several building blocks with school playing fields in the north, west and east of the teaching buildings. The site also includes ancillary service and storage structures and several small pockets of external hard and soft play areas. To the north of the site, we have footpaths number 6 and 7 for Framwood Moor, the Pitney Cars Local Nature Reserve and Framwood Moor Cars Local Wildlife Site. And there's also residential properties of Beadway and Hutton Way. To the east is Old Pit Lane and Finkel Road, and beyond that's Busy Bees Nursery and the preschool, another public right-of-way, as well as residential properties. Framwood Primary School and residential properties lie to the south, and to the west is the Cheval Centre and the King George playing fields, and beyond this, Framwood Front Street. So this site is predominantly located within Flood Zone 1 and is therefore at low risk of fluvial flooding. The site falls within the Coal Authority's defined high risk area and is a mineral safeguarding area for coal, sand and gravel. The site falls about 450 metres outside of the setting of the World Heritage Site and 2.2 kilometres from the World Heritage Site inner setting, and 1.2 km from the nearest conservation area. There's a Grade 2 listed building, which is the Marquess of Granby Public House, about 250 metres to the southwest of the site. So I have indicated here the 9 individual buildings to be demolished on this aerial photograph. This also provides an idea of the playing field layout, parking and tree coverage currently on the site. The main vehicular access to the site is from Old Pit Lane, located along the south-eastern boundary, and this serves as the primary internal route for visitors and staff. Parking is presently dispersed along the south and southwest edge of the buildings, with small clusters of spaces located along the road and a larger car park positioned at the end of the road and behind the most western teaching block. Student bus drop-off takes place off a turning circle between two buildings. Currently, there is no designated on-site parking for buses during school hours. There are 3 pedestrian entrances for students. So one is via Old Pit Lane, located north of the running track. Another is from Newton Drive, which serves as the primary entry point for most pupils. And then there's a third access point taken from Front Street on the west of the site through the Cheval Centre grounds. The Newton Drive access is used throughout the course of the school day, and the Old Pit Lane and Front Street entrance can be used at the start and the end of the school day. So I've included some photos here of the buildings to be demolished. As you can see, most of the buildings on the site vary in scale and mass and are mostly constructed from a prefabricated concrete panel system with ribbon and punched windows. They consist of 1-, 2-, and 3-storey blocks, with the majority having flat roofs. And that just gives you an idea of the state of the buildings at the moment. So this photograph shows the site for the new proposed teaching block, which is the playing fields to the northeast of the current buildings. So there you can make out parts of the upper floor windows and roof lines of the properties of Hutton Way to the north, behind that vegetation. And that leads me to this next slide. This shows a 6-metre change in levels between the teaching block site and those properties, as well as the over 80-metre distance and the vegetation that lies between. So we'd typically accept 24 metres between a building of this size and a dwelling. So the fact that they've actually achieved 80 metres is really sort of helpful in terms of amenity in this case. So I've included the main views of the site from Old Pit Lane. As you can see, the vegetation on the boundary helps to screen views into the site. This photograph shows the current main vehicle entrance, which is to remain as is. And these photos show the main staff and pupil entrances from Newton Drive, which are also to remain. These photographs show the current off-site infrastructure to the pedestrian entrances to the school presently, which are also to remain. So this is the proposed site plan with the proposed new 3-storey school building proposed to be sited immediately adjacent to the northeast of the existing buildings that would be demolished. The building form would be arranged in a horseshoe around a central southwest facing courtyard, providing a sheltered social space for staff and students. Beyond the courtyard to the southwest, there would sit a new multi-use games area and shelters. The works would avoid impacting the existing suite of turf pitches to the northwest of the site, and accessible routes would be provided from the pedestrian site entrances to each building entrance. The main entrance would be accessible and secure. A single grass sports pitch to the northern boundary of the site would be required to be relocated slightly to the west in order to accommodate the footprint of the new school building. The site boundary treatment would be largely as existing, with new fence lines formed between the buildings and the perimeter fence. A total of 168 trees would need to be removed to facilitate the development. A comprehensive scheme of hard and soft landscaping is proposed, including 324 new trees, a wetland, suds, a habitat garden and dining courtyard. In terms of highway layout, the turning circle from Old Pit Lane would be retained and enhanced. The proposed new parking includes 54 new cycle spaces, 10 new disability spaces, 17 new parking spaces and 10 new bus spaces, in addition to the current number of parking spaces on the site. A suite of visitor and accessible parking would be provided directly outside the school entrance, linking to the turning circle by a new spine road that would run between the running track and the new building. This route would also allow for service vehicle access to the southwest of the retained sports building. A new dedicated bus park would also be provided. And a new consolidated staff car park would be formed between the bus drop-off and the site's southern boundary with Framergut Primary School. So during construction on the new school building, a temporary access would be created from Old Pit Lane, adjacent to the current running track, and that would be removed during the course of the phases of the construction and demolition, once it's no longer required. So we've got some floor plans here. At ground floor, there's an assembly hall, a library resource centre and dining hall and specialist teaching service. On the first floor is general teaching spaces, sixth form social and study spaces. And on the second floor is further general teaching spaces and staff spaces. In terms of the proposed elevations, the main and most visible elevation would be broken up by a recessed triple height glazed entrance. Key spaces would be accentuated through facade projections. The building would include large areas of solar control glazing with high window heads and minimal framing. The facade would blend a high quality red brick with light tone cast stone around key spaces, and darker brick would be introduced as recessed panels between the teaching windows in levels 1 and 2, along with contemporary grey window frames and louvres. A flat roof is proposed, which would provide an expansive surface to accommodate a large array of photovoltaics. In addition to the PVs, the building would incorporate ground source heat pumps. We've got some visuals that give you a better idea of the quality of the design. So this is the main elevation facing Old Pit Lane. We've got a few more visuals showing the courtyard areas, car parking, and the relationship to the sports areas. So turning to statutory consultees, there have been no objections from any statutory consultees, subject to conditions and informatives. In respect of internal consultees, there have been either no objections or conditions that have been suggested by strategy and delivery, design and conservation, archaeology, environmental health, which encompasses nuisance action, contamination and air quality. Ecology have no objections subject to conditions in a legal agreement for the BNG. Landscape confirm the magnitude of impact to landscape and visual amenity would be medium, but would reduce over time and consider the landscape scheme to be comprehensive and optimal, and highlight the need to protect trees scheduled for retention. The trees officer agrees to the need for the removal of the suggested trees. The active travel officer objects due to the lack of the active travel audit and an analysis for cycling connectivity. A condition is requested in relation to cycle parking to meet SPD requirements. Concerns were raised over the data, active travel targets, a lack of detail regards public transport, lack of off-site transport improvements and internal crossings. The travel plan advisor has said that the travel plan doesn't meet current requirements due to the targets not being in line with best practice. Has missed some queries as to why there's some issues with data between the two travel plans, and requests Park and Stride to be improved, but welcomes improved cycling. Durham Constabulary have provided advice in respect of design, security and counter-terrorism measures. So we've had very little objection. We've had 3 letters of objection from the public, raising concerns over on-street parking, how the site would be accessed during construction, the impacts to amenities such as privacy and noise, and commenting that there is an alternative location within the site that should have been considered with less impacts to neighbours. So in conclusion, great weight should be given to the need to expand the schools in accordance with the MPPF. This case has particular significant social benefits. The proposed development will provide an enhanced, modern, high-quality education facility on a site currently in use for education purposes. The proposed development would provide a significant benefit to the community, would be sustainable, safe, and well designed, and in keeping with and complementary to its surroundings. These clearly outweigh the minor identified policy conflicts in respect of parking, cycle parking, and BREEAM standards, and minor amenity harm during construction. Therefore, approval is recommended, subject to conditions, informatives, and a legal agreement to secure BNG monitoring. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Louisa. We have 2 supporters here Robert Dibden and Matthew Hill for the applicants. Here to answer questions only. Is that correct? Great, thank you. So over to the members. Any questions? Councillor Wilkes.
Yeah, I mean, this one's in my ward. I'll declare an interest, I suppose, that I've been asking for a new school there for 2 decades. It's not really a planning-related issue, that is it. I think the only real issues we ever get with this school is on the Newton Drive estate. We were always promised that when a new school was built that the access would be shut off, but in actual fact that would have probably ended up with even more transport problems across the area. And with parking all over the grassed areas on Finkel Road. I guess my only little question for the highways officers is, given that the school's moving further towards Bede Way from the existing site, it's likely there'll be more people wanting to access the school from different entrances than there is now, on whether there are any concerns about the Newton Hall junction, because obviously at the moment you end up with the pavement completely blocked with kids trying to get across the road to the Newton Hall estate, and if there's even more people entering and leaving that entrance point there, as to whether or not there's good, because I didn't see any specific improvements to that area in the corner of the site.
So that's over to highways. Have you got a response?
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and pick this one up. I'm aware that the highways officer who looked at this one considered what could be provided and what was provided in the transport assessment, and that the facilities that are available were adequate to accommodate the additional numbers that were envisaged. Within the highway, there's very limited that could actually be done to change the layout. So in that respect, it was felt that the existing facilities were adequate, and that was the view taken by the officer when assessing this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think you need to add anything, do you, Louisa? No. Any further questions? Is anyone wanting to say anything or to put forward a motion?
Recommend approval, Chair.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Catchwell. All those in favour of the application? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Meeting closed. Members, don't rush off. We've got a presentation to follow.